Good day, fellow travelers, and welcome to the Rantcast Show, a selection of letters to the editor from newspapers around the world, giving us a view into what regular folks are ranting about in Kuala Lumpur, Edinburgh, Chicago, Patagonia, and Nagorno-Karabakh. I'm Bill Valenti, Ranter-in-Chief, coming your way from the Melodio Mobilecast Studios here in Seattle, Washington, and this is Episode 5, June 2006. Rantcast is brought to you by a randomly selected word from the Oxford English Dictionary. Or, if no word is up to the task, then the sponsor might be a verse or two from the growing collection of poetry by yours truly or some more worthy poet. You'll have to wait until the end of this episode to find out who the sponsor is. No fast forwarding. Have a listen to the letters, and hear what people are agitated about around the planet. I was in India earlier this month in Mumbai, and I would have to say it was pure sensory overload. Hot, steamy, the smell of fresh mangoes everywhere as June is high season, and gazillions of people crowding the streets everywhere. I've mentioned in previous Rantcast episodes that Indian culture lends itself to very high-quality rants in their many newspapers. I suppose I can't return from India without citing at least one of these. So herewith a gem from the Hindustan Times, railing against endemic corruption in government, and very cleverly using a verse from an 18th century English poet, John Gay, to make the point. And here it is. When rogues like these a sparrow cries, to honor and employments rise, I court no favor, ask no place, for such preferment is disgrace. Ah, brevity indeed is clarity, and is not poetry the perfect literary form in which to encapsulate the best rants? More on this later on in the episode. Switching continents and cultures now, we find a well-researched rant in the Chicago Sun-Times concerning the heroic deeds of decorated war veteran Karl Rove, tongue held firmly in cheek while saying that. The writer is Bob Sarnowski from Arlington Heights, and the title, Rove War Record, Cut and Ran. Karl Rove recently referred to Democrats, some of whom have military backgrounds, as cut and run because they disagree with our open-ended mission in Iraq. Curiosity got the best of me, so I looked up Rove's military career. It appears that during the Vietnam conflict, in which many courageous young people lost their lives and limbs, Rove had a college deferment from 1969 through 1971 from the University of Utah, even though he was only a part-time student, 6 to 12 hours, during the spring and fall semesters of 1970. He should have been immediately reclassified 1A and eligible for military duty. In the first draft lottery, he was number 84, which means that without any deferment, he would have certainly been drafted. In 1970, he also was given an apprenticeship to work on a Republican campaign in Illinois, even though he was technically a, quote, student. In the fall of 1970, he registered at the University of Maryland, but dropped out mid-semester. He was briefly reclassified 1A, eligible for the draft, but in April 1971, he was reclassified 1H, not currently subject to processing for induction. During Richard Nixon's presidential campaign, young Rove tried to portray the Democratic nominee, Senator George McGovern, as a, quote, left-wing peacenik, unquote. In fact, during World War II, McGovern volunteered for the U.S. Army Air Force and was a decorated B-24 bomber pilot who flew 35 missions over North Africa and Italy, often against heavy anti-aircraft artillery. Rove has never seen any type of military service. For him to call or imply anyone a coward, especially those who have served with honor and who have experienced the horrors of war, is shameful. Mr. Sarnowski, well done. I'm impressed that you were able to uncover all this detail on our hero, Karl Rove. He can run, but the facts can't hide. People to Rove, he who lives in glass house should not throw stones. Next, we have an emotional rant on the emotional subject of immigration. From the Dallas Morning News, and the writers are N.M. and B.C. Lockridge from McKinney, Texas. And the title of the letter, As We Head to Anarchy. We just returned from a 2-week trip into the heartland of America where everyone was polite, friendly, self-reliant, hardworking, English-speaking, and patriotic. Teens and senior citizens manned the fast food restaurants. The grass was cut by retired gentlemen supplementing their income. All of America was like this until our vote-hungry leaders chose to selectively enforce the law. Instead of orderly legal immigration, we have been invaded by illiterate thugs who destroy private property, suck up benefits meant for legal citizens, and then demand that we speak their language, educate their kids, and allow them to fly their flags. When government refuses to enforce our laws, secure our borders, and honor our Constitution, can anarchy be far behind? Well, no doubt there is a great divide in America on this issue. For every rant on the Lockridge's side of the argument, there is an equally rational and emotional one advocating amnesty or at least a benevolent attitude towards the people who take on the lowest level, least desirable jobs in our economy. We'll be hearing lots more rants on this topic. The next letter, also from the Dallas Morning News, nicely synthesizes in a few sentences a very complex issue that has dominated the editorial pages of newspapers for the past month: what to do about the democratic and wacko People's Republic of North Korea. The writer, Patrick Cloutier from McKinney, Texas, does away with all the diplo-speak and, on the other hand, vacillation that all the media talking heads are prone to, and gets right to the heart of the issue: the real Korea problem. The U.S. again warns North Korea against testing missile, the Tuesday news story. While disturbing, North Korea testing a rocket that could reach the U.S. is not the real danger. We have nuclear subs that could devastate North Korea in minutes. North Korea has to know this. North Korea is a supply-demand problem. It has nuclear materials to sell to terrorists, and its people are starving. Terrorists have money and want to kill us. This kind of arms dealing makes economic sense to North Korea. Let's concentrate our efforts on curbing that. That is the danger. And now, at the risk of committing heresy in the middle of the quadrennial global sports orgy known as the World Cup, that's for soccer in case you didn't know, I picked a great letter from Craig Rodden in Louisville, Texas, from the Dallas Morning News, ranting about the game the rest of the world is nuts about, but which Americans seem to find as dull as toast, including yours truly. "Spare Me the Soccer" is the title of his letter. I am so tired of being told that soccer is the world's most popular sport. The fact is, no one, other than a few soccer moms and dads and immigrants, really gives a flip about the game. After reading a letter on Wednesday's editorial page, I did an informal poll at a small restaurant. I asked 19 people who won the NBA championship. 19 hands went up. I asked who knew if the U.S. was in the World Cup. 3 hands went up. This is how most of America feels. Soccer is a cute little game for Junior to play on Saturday morning, but it will never be TV fare on U.S. Sunday afternoons. Wow. You better not get off the plane in Brazil there. Here's a great rant from a fellow who is very unhappy that his hometown got such a low ranking in a Polite Cities survey that had New York City at the top. It's from the New Straits Times in Malaysia, and the writer is Mr. N. Singham in Kuala Lumpur. "Survey was merely media hype" is the title. The survey by the Reader's Digest showing Kuala Lumpur is the 3rd rudest city in the world is a joke. New York, the most polite city in the world? Just go to Queens, New York, and check out the Q9 bus stop at Sipton Boulevard and Jamaica Avenue during rush hours, and you wonder how on earth New York topped the list. The whole survey is nothing but media hype. Thieves, common criminals, and thugs in Brazil say thank you, and this is registered as civilized behavior. In the West, from childhood, you are programmed to say thank you for meaningless things, and it comes automatically and not from the heart. It said Mumbai is the rudest city on earth. But when you look at Indians, they don't say thank you with a word. Their thanks come from the manner of speech and body language, and English is not their mother tongue. This discriminatory survey must be debunked as the work of uncultured, clueless, and incompetent people. I just came back from a trip that took me to Kuala Lumpur, Kota Kinabalu, Sandakan, and Malacca, and I find Malaysians the most courteous and friendly people. Well, these last 2 letters are on a more somber note, one from an elderly Israeli citizen whose experiences exemplify the deeply rooted enmity between Muslims and Jews in the Middle East, and the second railing against the American government's astonishingly cavalier response to the suicide of 3 prisoners at Guantanamo. From The Independent in the UK, written by Rachel Bird in Oxfordshire, and the title, "Deep Historic Roots of Hatred in the Middle East." Sir, Ruth Tenney, another reader, wrote, quote, "As an Israeli born and bred, I was brought up to believe that the Palestinians and Arabs are our sworn enemies," unquote. I wonder where her tutors got that idea. I must have dreamt that the Syrians taught their children that the Jews would kill them as soon as look at them, long before Israel as such existed. And I must have imagined the unspeakable cartoons which vilify Jews in the Arab press. Also the fact that senior clerics have for years proclaimed loudly that Jews are vermin and must be eliminated. Most of all, the Arab world would never, never, never acknowledge Israel. I too am Israeli, but considerably older at 83. I mention my age because I remember vividly how it was in the beginning when I lived between 2 Palestinian families in great amity. An aunt and uncle lived in Mount Carmel and befriended an Arab family with 4 sons who lived near the Syrian border, helping with their education and so on. One day someone came over from Syria and asked if this family was friendly with some Jews. They said yes, and were told that if they continued this friendship, something dire would happen to them. Needless to say, they didn't offer to help those boys with their education. My relatives did, but in secret. That was in 1923. And in case you wondered what the rest of the world thinks of us these days, this letter regarding the suicide of 3 prisoners at Guantanamo will leave no doubt. It's from The Independent in the UK, written by Sasha Simic from London. And the title, Barbarous American Reaction to Suicides. Sir, the apologists for the war on terror have always maintained that the superior values of the West were in opposition to the barbarism of Islam. I invite anyone to find a trace of humanity, never mind superior values, in the official reaction by the U.S. to the suicides of 3 men who could no longer tolerate their imprisonment in the gulag that is Guantanamo Bay. Colleen Graffi, no less than the Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for Public Diplomacy, dismissed the deaths as, quote, a good PR move, unquote. With breathtaking callousness, she went on to interpret the suicides as, quote, a tactic to further the jihadi cause, unquote, by men who did not value life. Graffi represents a government which values life so highly it has murdered at least 100,000 Iraqis in an illegal war, has used white phosphorus against the people of Fallujah, has perpetrated massacres against the people of Haditha, and has carried out the widespread abuses of human rights at Abu Ghraib. If anyone still subscribes to the ludicrous idea that the West, under the leadership of the U.S., represents a superior civilization, they should think on Colleen Graffi's words. They are the words of a barbarian. Wow, that's a rant. Well, and finally, a word from our sponsor. I couldn't find a single word in the OED that was willing to serve this time around. The best are taking the summer off. So herewith what you might call a poetic rant against the dreck that passes for poetry in contemporary journals. The title is Poetry Slammed, and the author is yours truly. Of verses seen in magazines of literary fame, a precious few are poems true and worthy of the name. The writer might himself delight with rants and raves and pleadings, but all for naught the works of fraud if there's no joy in the reading. Well, that's all for now. Here's to fair winds and a following sea. Keep on ranting.